Emily, very good to see you this morning. And I feel a bit of a sort of, what's the word? A bit of a sort of fake, really, because you should be doing this the other way around, because this is actually your livelihood. But here we are. Let's start off by, I want to admire once again that amazing backdrop, which I gather your parents brought back from their honeymoon.
They did, yes. Some years ago now, but from Thailand. You can't fully see it. And if I move the screen, I showed you earlier, but there's a carriage here with a wedding party. It's a huge wedding procession, all in beautiful brocade, and I'm sure that their gold and silver word drawers would have a field day wondering what this was.
Yeah. But now tell me, so what part of the country were you brought up in London?
London, Greater London. So I'm in Surrey now, which is home, and has been for a long time now. So yes, very lovely to be able to get in and out of London very quickly, but great to have some green space and not too far. So I'm in Esher in Surrey.
Yeah. That's sort of not far from going towards Epsom, is it really?
Yes, we're just behind Sandown Racecourse. So that.
Yeah. So a bit further north, I see. Yes, yeah. And where were you when you were just a tot, as it were? Were you still in Esher?
Yes, so my senior school years were in Esher. So I was born in Putney, and then my parents, when I was quite small, about 18 months, 24 months, went to Hampton, and we moved there, and then I went to school in Hampton. So I went to primary school in Hampton and all the way through to my sixth form years.
But then you said you went on to a school which has very strong city links.
Yes, so my primary school was a small all-girls day school called Jill, which is celebrating its 70th anniversary this year, which is very exciting. And that was founded by a wonderful lady who apparently one day said to her husband, "I want to educate girls, and we're setting up a school at home." And that was that. She was very matter of fact. And then the ethos of my junior school, which was not far away in Hampton, and senior school was very similar actually. But it's the oldest girls' school in the country. Or so we think from history, but it was founded in the city. It was founded by the will of Lady Eleanor Hollis in 1710, and it was at St Giles Cripplegate. So that's just where Barbican is now. The church is still there. It wasn't a church school; it's a Church of England slant to it, but it was founded there. There's a blue plaque on Barbican Walkway where the school once stood, and then about 200 years after it had been there, decided to move to Hampton, but in the middle of that moved to Hackney. So it had a sort of up and down city links around London, and then they wanted more space. In the 1934, they moved to Hampton, had a beautiful Art Deco building built and sort of 24 acres of wonderful fields to run around in. So yes, very, very interesting to have that city link.
Yes, it is interesting, yes. And of course, lots of great schools which are now well out in the country started off in the centre of London, just up from where Stationers was. I'm trying to think, was it, one of the great boys' public schools was there in Newgate Street. And so many, yes, have made that journey. Even the Stationers Company School, which I attended, started off just off Fleet Street and then went out a bit further to Hornsey, North London, when they needed more space, I think. So then you went from school to the University of Leeds, where you studied history of art.
I was very, very fortunate in that I think the A-level no longer exists, but my school had 4 of us studying at A-level, and I just loved the subject. I hadn't taken the subject at all until AS level, so just after GCSE. And a friend's mother at the time, who was a teacher at the school, said to me, "Look, I really think you would love history of art." And I thought, "Oh, I'm not very arty, but I love history. I loved English as well." And I was very much a sort of arts subject, essay writing sort of pupil. And I went to my sort of taster session and fell in love with it. I absolutely adored it. But history of art at Leeds is a slightly different course to many others, because I really wanted to focus on non-Western art. I'd done a lot of Western art in my A-levels. So I thought, well, if I'm going to go study this for 3 years, I'd like to do a broader curriculum. So Leeds has a specialism in non-Western art, and I specialised in my final year in African art.
There's one wonderful piece of non-Western art we've just been talking about immediately behind you. But it's interesting, when you were talking about the school moving to Hampton, one of the comments you made was in a lovely new Art Deco building. So clearly, art now does run through your veins.
Yes, I think so. I remember the first time I looked at Stationers Hall. In fact, I didn't know about the Stationers Company, which sounds ridiculous as a journalist, but and particularly having gone to City University, but that's a different story. So I was looking for a livery company. My mother is a Freeman of the Worshipful Company of Spectacle Makers. I had loved all of those buildings and all the architecture and all the history behind them for a long, long time. And I happened to have an email invite to an evening with the Sunday Times editor that was held at Stationers Hall. I thought, well, where's this hall that I don't know about? And because Stationers is slightly tucked off the beaten track neatly, I hadn't come across it before. And I remember walking into that building thinking, gosh, part of me felt, this is going to sound very cheesy, but slightly at home. I felt very comfortable in its surroundings. I thought, gosh, this does feel like so much knowledge within these walls. But I loved the architecture. I just thought it was absolutely beautiful.
And presumably architecture was part of your course at Leeds. Did you do some? Yeah.
Yeah, so I did, yes, and equally at A-level I did some architecture as well. But I also in my first year specialised in some country house and museum studies to sort of get a real understanding of the history of architecture and building design as well. So I was very lucky. Leeds was a very, very broad course. I did lots of sculpture as well, and everything that goes really within a very, very broad category of the history of art.
Yes, so many of my friends are architects, and I've been on various commissions and things that look to architecture, the Fabric Commission for cathedrals and things. So I'm a bit sort of, I was an architect manqué. I couldn't have been an architect, I wouldn't have had the skills or talent, but I just love buildings and seeing what makes them. So then you went on to the City University and did an MA in broadcast journalism.
I did, yes. So I worked in television briefly after graduating. And at the time, it was a script that went on to great things. We really didn't know what. I went in as an intern, as work experience, and the script was Downton Abbey. So I helped at a very low level. I met cast, which was amazing because I was on the very much front of house for Carnival Film and Television. And all of the actors and actresses had to come via me for their auditions. And I was on the script meetings and had a lovely time meeting Julian Fellows and mentoring his son and things. So that was really exciting. I thought, no, I really do love broadcasting. I love that part, but drama's not really for me. I love the theatre. I did various theatre exams at school, but I was very much not a performer. But I really loved broadcasting as a medium. I loved listening to radio. I love Radio 4, all those sort of things. But well, how do I get myself into that? And how do I become part of it? And sort of as opposed to behind the scenes. So yes, after some work experience at a local radio station, I thought I really do want to go and do this as my career. And it became really difficult, it still is, for lots of people to get through the application process for lots of broadcasting jobs, unless you've got a lot of law behind you, mainly because of the amount of court cases that have gone with tabloids being less than kind on people. So I looked and thought, who are my idols? Who do I admire? What was their route? And one of those was Sophie Raworth and Carolyn Wyatt, BBC's defence correspondent as well. And they're both been to City and did what, when they was there, it was called a PG DIP, postgraduate diploma. When I was there, because of this extra law that had to go onto it and a large final project, it became a master's. So yes, so I started there in 2012, just after the Olympics that I'd covered for the local radio station. And after I finished at City, yeah, the doors started opening immediately, actually, even before I'd finished.
But when I look at your career so far, you've done so many different things, and it looks as if there were two careers running alongside each other, because you also work for Chesterton's and Featherstone Lee, was it? Or yeah. Yeah. So were you doing some journalism and also some land agent type work, or?
So the property side of things came in mainly because I needed a way to fund part of my master's. So I started as a Saturday girl for Featherstone Lee in Twickenham, actually, not far from the rugby stadium, on a Saturday, just to give me enough money to sort of pop it in and out so I needed to a week. And I lived at home to sort of save money as well. So it was a long commute in each day, but worth it. But therefore I started in property doing that. And then my boss very kindly, as I had graduated, said to me that you're very good at this, and which I just was doing my Saturday work. He said that you're actually earning an awful lot of commission for the office, but we're not paying you it because you're not staff. You're just Saturday staff. So if you'd like to join on a 3-month contract, then I can start paying you properly. So yes, the two sort of ran a little bit concurrently for a while. When I finished at City, I was very fortunate. I was offered a job straight away with Euronews, and I covered the royal baby's birth. That was Prince George. So you can work out how long ago that was. And the first gay weddings, that was a real privilege to be at Brighton Pavilion for those, to cover those. Yeah, so my property work sort of worked quite nicely around that freelance lifestyle. I went to ITV down in Bristol before I went to Channel 4, and Channel 5 in the middle of that. So lots of broadcasting. Freelancers go all over the place, as I'm sure everybody's aware. But all of that together meant that I could do this property alongside. And I had a very difficult, the world had a very difficult summer of 2014, news-wise, of some horrific atrocities in the Middle East that we hadn't seen for a long, long time. And I found that very emotionally tough. So when I was at Channel 4 News, I was very lucky. I was interview producing for the main team. A huge privilege. I was behind the camera, but I literally sort of sat next to Cathy Newman and Jon Snow, and would discuss the order of what we're doing with them on a daily basis, and find their interviewees for them and do a pre-interview with them, bit like now. I decided after that summer that actually I needed a bit of time out. So I then went into property more full time, and my journalism took more of a back seat. Hence why I then went on to Chesterton's in central London. I worked in the Hyde Park office for a while, and in Battersea for 6 months as well. But found myself itching to go back to journalism. So then I was approached by one of my previous employers in Tolworth, near Surbiton, Radio Jackie, and they said, would you come back? We'd love to have you as one of our main newsreaders. Chance meeting on a train. These things are funny how they happen, but the editor was there. She said, look, I'd love to have you back. Would you come back? And that's where I've been for the last 18 plus months now.
That's really interesting. And you said at one point you'd interviewed the Foreign Secretary. Now, we've had so many Foreign Secretaries, I've lost track of who it would have been. Who was the Foreign Secretary you interviewed?
I'm very fortunate in that he is my local MP, actually. So I've interviewed Boris when he was Mayor of London, in fact. I was there for his second election into term. Right. So I interviewed him, and he obviously then took on various different roles as well. I've met him a few times. Very interesting to interview and great fun. Yes, a bit of a loose cannon. You have to have your wits about you, that's for certain. And then Dominic Raab is my local MP.
Right, yeah.
So he's secretary, and we're very lucky that we have this connection, particularly because of the radio station, that he'll very happily talk to us about all manner of things. So I have a work connection and a local connection as well.
Now, when did you eventually become a stationer?
Well, I've just become a Freeman elect. So I found out very exciting. It's been in the process for a while. COVID, as I'm sure it has for many people, has somewhat got in the way of the original plan. So after this wonderful evening at Stationers with the Sunday Times editor giving his annual lecture, I inquired how I might become part of it, and looked to see if my background was suitable, and thought actually yes, it seems to match up reasonably well. So I got in contact with the office, in fact with Deborah, and I remember being told I had to speak to Giles and to William, and I got a phone call out of the blue one summer's evening, and I remember it vividly. I was standing outside the BBC, and not for work, I was there to go and see a recording. It was a gorgeous summer's evening. It was Ella Khan, who was the chair of the Young Stationers, and now taking back Lewis. And she said, look, we've got our annual dinner next week. It would be lovely if you'd like to come as my guest. I'd really like to introduce you to people and get a feel of the company. So I, of course, said, yes, that would be wonderful. And met so many wonderful people that evening. And then shortly after that, put my application in, and it's sort of gone through the process for the last, 18 months or so, I guess, after COVID. So
anytime now, we should be making you free.
Yes, I hope so.
Indeed. And then you must think about going on to clothes as a liveryman. That would be you know, even better. Yeah. And so
Yes.
you'll be part of Young Stationers too.
Well, very kindly, since that dinner, Ella and Lewis said, look, you know, it is a matter of process and time. Very, very kindly, the master at the time, Trevor, very kindly said he'd back my application. So did, well, a number of people said they'd back me, which was lovely. So they said, look, we'll put you on the sort of Young Stationers WhatsApp group, which I've, from other conversations I've seen with you, it's quite an active group. We're all quite keen to stay in touch with each other. So I saw Rupert's interview with you a few weeks ago, and he said it's great. What's lovely about it, you can be anybody under 40, so you get a really broad range of people and backgrounds in different parts of their lives and careers and that sort of thing. But yeah, so they put me on that group, and there were various meetings. There was a great one at the British Library. We had an exhibition we went to go and see there. There have been various quizzes and things over lockdown. We've had various meetings and sort of pub meetings in London when we could pre-COVID. So I was very much welcomed with open arms, which was so gracious of them, even though I wasn't officially a Freeman yet. So I've sort of been tagging along, and now I can sort of feel more part of it. It's great. And
presumably you're so used to all this that, you know, you didn't faze you in the slightest to find yourself at the other end of the interviewing process in terms of, you know, doing this sort of thing.
Yes, it's peculiar. I think my training at City, I guess, stood me in very good stead to be on the other side of things. It is peculiar to be interviewed, but again, it's on a different part of it's strange to be interviewed about yourself. That's quite peculiar. Sort of talk about yourself for quite a while. But yes, I think it's something that if I can share my knowledge with people and my experiences, particularly I mentor a few students at City University at the moment, and they've been interviewing me recently, which is probably why I'm a little more eloquent and less rambly maybe than I sometimes have been. But they want to know pitfalls and what to do and what not to do. So if I can share that knowledge with people, then yeah, it's a real privilege to be interviewed instead of interviewing forwards.
And do you ever still, as a journalist, particularly in broadcast journalism, do you ever still find yourself feeling nervous?
Oh yes, I think every day. And I'm very fortunate. During this pandemic, I became full-time at Radio Jackie as not only a broadcast journalist and a newsreader, but I also then started covering travel and traffic, which I'd done before. And as the months progressed, I became more and more of a co-presenter. So I now co-present a show on air between 1 and 4 every day, whilst doing the news and the travel. And then I also do from 4 till 6 on another show, but I don't co-present that. I just do the news for that, because it's getting a lot busier by that part of the day and for the 6 o'clock news. So I'm very, very fortunate in that I have a lot of airtime. But again, those nerves are always there every day. As soon as you put your microphone up, yes, both you and my co-presenter, he's very experienced. If you don't have the butterflies every day, I think you're probably not doing the right thing for you. But it's mainly excitement, I think, and obviously having to be a bit careful about what you say on air, make sure there's no slip ups. But yeah, that keeps you on your toes. It keeps it lively and fresh and new.
Yeah. Yes, I think you're quite. A bit of nervousness for anyone who has to sort of speak in public is quite important. It keeps you up to speed. Interesting to hear you talk about the traffic, doing traffic on the, because even that could, if that's done well, it could be quite. I can't remember the man's name. There's a chap in BBC Radio London, and I always used to look forward to hearing him because he had the most extraordinary way of. What's the word? Not sort of quite pronunciation, and he was funny too. You knew that there was a sort of he knew he was being funny. I'm sure he's probably still on now, but we don't hear Radio London now. Anyway.
No, delivery is so important, and your intonation, and also if you're having a long day, everybody can hear it in your voice once you get tired. So you can't afford to ever sound like you're not bright and breezy. So particularly with travel. People don't want to be stuck in the traffic jam with you droning on about how awful it is. You have to make quite a whole day. And if you're funny, fantastic. On the whole, I think because my serious journalist hat is on most of the time, it tends to be quite straightforward, not funny traffic with me. But again, you have to get it right, in that it's not simply just reading the traffic and finding what's happening on the roads. If you send people on the M25 when it's shut, they're not going to be at all happy with you. So yes, it can be quite detailed. Not so
absolutely.
Much. It's quite.
Anyway, we probably ought to come to a stop. Otherwise, Deborah will tell me yet again I've failed in my timing and so on. But because we can't get Radio Jackie up in Berwick-on-Tweed, so I'm looking forward to seeing your next move to one of the national networks, and then we can hear you and pick up where we start. Where I've heard here today. We'll have a drink when we're all allowed back into the hall again. Yes, absolutely. Well, the station is online, so you can tune in on the web, and there's an app as well. We have a global audience at the moment because people are at home. So we'd love you for you to have a listen. But yes, I would love that very much. That would be fantastic. Yeah, and I'll tune in, as you say, on the net and try and find Radio Jackie. Thank you so much, Emily. It's been really good fun. You too. Thank you very much. Stay safe and well.